You want to listen to a podcast?
By who?
Georgia GOP Congressman Doug Collins.
How is it?
The greatest thing I have ever heard in my whole life.
I could not believe my ears.
In this house, wherever the rules are disregarded, chaos and mob rule. It has been said today, where is bravery? I'll tell you where bravery is found and courage is found. It's found in this minority who has lived through the last year of nothing but rules being broken, people being put down, questions not being answered. And this majority say, be damned with anything else. We're going to impeach and do whatever we want to do. Why? Because we won an election. I guarantee you, one day you'll be back in the minority and it ain't going to be that fun. Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. Glad to have you with us today. Thanks for tuning in. We've been a lot of travel, a lot of stuff. Friday's Finest with Chip and James been great. Glad to be back with you. We got another great Friday's Finest coming up this week that you will not want to miss because we're back and we're going to discuss the absolute horrendous nature of the CFPB. And not CFPB, I'm already back on politics, but the college football playoff folks and how they came to the top four, which is just, again, absolutely ridiculous, but we'll deal with that later on Friday. There's more important things to talk about today, and that is the wonderfully inept state of our country at this point. And I want to talk about a few things with that after the break. But it's good to have you back here on the Wednesday edition of the Doug Collins podcast. Right after the break, we're going to dive into it.
Hey, folks, when you look out and you see the country and just the disarray it is, you see the Biden administration, you see the wholesale prices have just went through the roof again. Inflation is tearing us up. If you have your finances all impinged in just a few areas, if you're just in stocks and bonds and you're not diversified, I got some news for you. You need a navigator. You need somebody to help you get to where you need to go with those finances. And I can't think of anybody better to do that than my friends at Legacy Precious Metals. You need precious metals in that portfolio. You need gold and silver. And Legacy Precious Metals, the folks there, they're the navigators. They know how to deal with tough times. They know and how to look ahead and take your personal situation and make it something that can be workable for you in the long term, because that's at the end of the day, that's the one you're most concerned about. You need to make sure that your personal finances and your retirement are secure. You need folks like Legacy Precious Metals helping you in that. They will take the time to learn you. They'll learn your finances. They'll learn where your investment goals are, and they'll help you get there. And metals and gold right now in this kind of crazy inflation, in this kind of crazy economy with the Biden's economy is just, you need that help. And Legacy Precious Metals is the one to do that. So give Legacy Precious Metals a call, 866-528-1903, 866-528-1903, or you can always visit them online at legacypminvestments.com, and you can download their free investor's guide. Legacy Precious Metals, they're the ones you need. They're the navigators to help you through these turbulent times.
Hey everybody, it's MyPillow's 20th year anniversary, and over 80 million MyPillows have been sold. Mike Lindell and MyPillow wants to thank each of you and every one of you for giving you the lowest price in history on their MyPillows. You will receive a queen-size MyPillow for $19.98. Regular price is $69.98, and just $10 more for a king size. You will receive deep discounts on all MyPillow products, such as bed sheets, mattress toppers, pet beds, mattresses, my slippers, and so much more. This is a time to try out something other than the amazing products that you've had your eye on. Go to mypillow.com, click on the radio podcast square, and use the promo Collins, Collins, to receive this amazing offer on the queen size MyPillow for $19.98, or call 800-986-3994. This offer comes with a 10-year warranty and 60-day money-back guarantee. It's time to start getting the quality sleep you deserve. You know how I know that? Because I sleep on a MyPillow every night. Go to mypillow.com and use promo code Collins, Collins, or call 800-986-3994 today. All right. As I said, look, I never thought that, real life, and it's amazing to me how real life and sports always seem to intersect, and there's no better way to see the intersection this past week than to see the absolute just craziness of the College Football Playoff Committee. And I'm going to have to say I'm agreeing with Paul Feinbaum on one thing, and I'm going to touch today. I promise you, we got Biden to discuss, we've got the Hill to discuss, and everything else. But and also Donald Trump and the presidential stuff to deal with today as well. But let me just say this. I don't normally agree with Paul Feinbaum on everything. Probably not most things. But Paul Feinbaum made this comment that I heard today that was very clear, and it was from another reporter who talked about the fact that if you were in the room with the college football playoff people, nobody would know what anybody did or how they voted. And I have to agree with Feinbaum. this is something that's like, okay, why is this, there's no transparency here. Why do we, and something that deals not only in just the atmosphere and deals with the reputation of many in the college community, that you're also talking billions of dollars over an outlay of TV rights and everything that goes to these. How would you not know if there was somebody who had a bias? There was somebody that didn't look at this. But anyway, a whole different issue. We'll discuss that more. But it is looking more and more like Washington, D.C., where transparency is also not a big issue. Let's hit on a couple of things that we've not had a chance to talk about. This ultimate divide in this country that is going more and more on the anti-Semitic vibe that is taking over, in which you have pro-Hamas, pro-terrorist, is what these many of these demonstrations have broken down to. When you have pro-Hamas groups, and I'm not going to call them pro-Palestinian. You can get mad all you want. Go to DougCollinsPodcast.com, click the email button, send me all you want. I don't really give a rip, okay? If you Palestinian people and their plight is one thing. Hamas governs Gaza with an iron fist. They determine who gets food, who gets water, who gets shelter. They determine everything. And they're the ones who have been lobbing rockets into Israel every day, seemingly for the last 15, 16 years since Israel pulled out. There's no Israelis in Gaza, and this is what you get. So let's just be very honest here. This is not a Palestinian argument. This is a Hamas argument being made. And if you're making this argument and you're not even dealing with these other issues, then it's a pro-Hamas argument. So just basically shut up, sit down. I mean, this is I can't make it any clearer, especially when you see the horrific activity that took place. Again, and I'm not sure how I have to even clarify this. What happened on October 7th was horrific. The rapes, multiple rapes, where they would just line them up and rape them to vilify them, take their heads off, cut body parts off. I know this is sad to say, and for a family friendly podcast here, but let me just say that this is what happened. And we have to show that is the reason why Israel has to go in and take out Hamas. And yes, there are civilian casualties. Yes, they have been told to leave. Yes, no other Arab country wants them. This is something that still needs to be discussed. But Israel is doing everything they possibly can to tell them, get out of the way. Don't let them, Hamas find refuge in your home or underneath your hospitals or anywhere else. They're going to be taken out. It is still amazing to me that it took October 7th for Israel to actually wait this long to actually go in and begin to root out the problems of Hamas in Gaza. Seeing how they had been literally lobbing mortars and rockets into Israel almost daily for the last, as I said earlier, 10 to 15 years. Can you imagine, for just a second, and let's put this in perspective, if Mexico or Cuba or the Bahamas or Canada were regularly lobbing missiles and bombs and missiles and mortars into the United States, how long would it take us to take them out completely? I'll wait for the answer. Really, we would take them out pretty quickly. But this happens to Israel every single day. Whether it is Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah to the north in Lebanon, or just a random act of crazy from somebody that Iran is backing today. They have to live with this at all times in the nation of Israel. And I think this is the part that, again, it's amazing to me that sometimes I'm just backing up here. We're having this conversation on why did we have to, now to put the brakes on and hold up and don't do this in Gaza. And the question is no other country in the world. I mean, can you imagine, just England taking fire from Holland or France or Ireland or anywhere and not responding? Again, this is what makes this inevitably so hard to deal with. And in dealing with this, they have to be taken out. But I've got a bigger gripe that nobody wants to talk about. And the Qataris are going to have to talk about this as well, because the Qatar is where the Hamas leadership is, living in high luxury, eating well, doing whatever feeds their things that they want fed and that really they hold against the entire Palestinian people who live in Gaza. They do not need to be in luxury. If they want to fight a battle against Israel, they need to be shipped out of Qatar and they need to be shipped back to Gaza City post haste, right now. If you want to cause war but other people dying, you don't need to stay down there in luxury and do it. And the amazing part is how Israel has been restrained enough to not take them out where they're at. Again, how do you justify this? I mean, that's like saying that the United States is going to war with China or Russia or whoever, and all of our leadership is going to go to the Caribbean, and all their leadership is going to go to somewhere in the South Pacific, and let the two countries just battle it out while the two leadership groups sit there in luxury, eating very fine food, having no problems, no shooting at them or anything else. I mean, I'm trying to put this in easy terms for you to understand, but this is what Hamas leadership is doing. Hamas leadership is simply sitting in a third country, directing the torture of their own people who elected them to lead, to get them water. I mean, these are the same people who tore up water pipes given for humanitarian aid to make them into rockets. Okay. Again, you want to support that, you want to scream two-party state, then we can have all the discussion of peace you want, but the peace has to start with, number one, Israel has a right to exist, and number two, we have to live at peace, and you cannot continue to fire rockets. And then when you decide to cross the border, you rape, pillage, plunder, cut people's heads off, cut people's breasts off, cut people, parts off, and kill them while they're sleeping, take a baby out of the womb, put baby in a oven. I mean, this is all fact that happened. So again, now you have an administration who has been less than forthright in how they've dealt with this. I mean, there are different standards in how they dealt with the Ukraine and how they deal with Israel. They've told Israel to abide by international law, make sure they don't have any war crimes, make sure they do all this, never really giving anything to Ukraine except money. I had a big disagreement with a person the other day, right before Thanksgiving, on Fox News, where they basically said, it was calling out Israel and basically saying that they were mass murderers. And we got into a big fight about it on TV. And I said, you're not going to do that. You're not going to get to come in here and just call indiscriminate killing is what Israel is doing. I mean, just not. But this is where we've ended up at. In the United States, you have people who have no understanding of the Palestinian region, who have no understanding of Israel, who have no understanding of Hamas and the terrorists and thugs that they are, who are protesting in our streets, and they're using it just as they did other incidences of violence that happened to just destroy cities. And when you have just recently in Philadelphia, where you have Hamas protesters, sympathizers attacking Jewish businesses, going after people. You have students, as I heard just today on Capitol Hill, you had students who are not safe in their own schools, and you have college presidents at Harvard and MIT who are so politically correctly stupid that they're not even protecting the Jewish students on campus. This can't stand. I mean, if this is where we're at as a country, it just blows the mind as to where we are. So again, we've got to stand with Israel. We've got to make sure that this Hamas is put to rest, and that they can't keep doing this, where Gaza can be safe and productive, and that they can actually have freedoms, that they would exist in a situation in which they would be peaceful in. But again, it's not the Palestinian people who try to make and scrape by a living. It is their Hamas dictators that are keeping them this way. Make this deathly clear to you that this is a situation in which the leaders were elected by the Palestinian people on promises that they would be taken care of and that they would, fight for them. And yet they take their water pipes, they take their food, they take everything else. And then the world is saying, well, that's too much. Don't go after them. Again, Biden administration, this has just got to, again, I'm not going to put up with it. I'm not going to put up with it here on this podcast. I'm not going to talk about it in the sense of any other way, because that's just where it is. The other problem I have with this situation that we've got to deal with in the Middle East is the fact that the Biden administration is giving tacit approval, it appears, to the Iranian-backed military group, especially the Houthis in Yemen and others, to attack American military bases, American shipping, international shipping. And yet we seem to do nothing. Well, seemingly, we'll hit a warehouse. We've yet, just until recently, have not killed any of the ones who were shooting at us. And we have had them attack our ships. Our ships took out 3 drones coming from Yemen. And this is a country that makes Gaza, in some ways, actually look prosperous, much more prosperous than they are, because they are in Yemen, in which you can't even barely feed yourself, and yet they are firing state-of-the-art weapons and drones and using them to attack Israel and to attack the United States Navy and shipping fleets in that region, in which they actually can take a helicopter, land on a plane, and take a ship and take it hostage. Now, they're not doing this because all of a sudden they turn sand into dollars. They're doing it because Iran is backing them. And Jake Sullivan just the other day said the quiet part out loud when he said, yes, it is Iran who is giving them money. They don't have the resources to do this unless Iran gave them money. I wish Jake had went ahead and said the other parts out loud is that the Biden administration has helped in this fiasco by propping up the oil revenues out of Iran because of the prices. And they've also been giving them money through these settlements. Again, for what reason except for them to turn around and use the money against us? I mean, we're funding both sides here. And it's just, again, for someone who deals with this, who looks at it from a military perspective, who looks at it from a national security perspective, this cannot, continue in this way. And the only thing these terrorists understand is force. Understand, you shoot something at us, we kill you. That's all they understand. Now, you may not like that, and you may think that's horrific. But I'm going to tell you, if you have a loved one on one of those ships in the Red Sea right now, and they send a drone or they send a ICBM or they send a missile at them, and we don't take that group out, then you're putting your own American lives and sons and daughters' lives in danger, period. End of statement. This is what it is. When they're attacking our military bases, our airfields in the Middle East at a rate of almost 100 since October the 7th. And we've had 3 responses, basically, or 4 at best, depending on how you want to count it. And this is, again, I don't understand the Biden administration in this function. So when you take the anti-Semitic rise in the United States with the pro-Palestinian, pro-Hamas, pro-terrorist groups that are terrorizing many of our very democratic cities, and then you take the inadequate response from the Biden administration on the defense side and putting our airmen and seamen and sailors and soldiers in harm's way because we're not properly responding to the attacks upon our bases, then you have a situation that is just deteriorating worse and worse. And the more it deteriorates, the more we don't take a strong stand now, the more it is going to be likely that we end up in a further escalation of this war, which none of us want. So when you look at the world picture right now, you have Ukraine who's begging for money. They're sending their prime minister, their vice president here to beg for money from Congress. The Zelensky is going to talk to the senators about. They talked to me yesterday about the getting more money. They're on the verge of being claiming that they don't have enough money to continue on. That Russia's getting ready to take over. That this is going back to what many thought in the original, that Russia would just outlast them, and that seems to be the strategy right now with Russia and Zelensky. So for the president who was elected, that the adults would be back in charge. If this going back to Afghanistan, this is going back to how we deal with North Korea, if this is how we're giving money to terrorists in Iran, if this is how we deal with China and Taiwan, if this is how we deal with Russia through the Ukraine, and this is how we deal with friends like Israel in the Middle East, I think it would be time to put anybody back in, because the adults are not in the room, or in the case of Joe Biden, seem to be asleep at the wheel, because our standing in the world is awful right now. And I believe the 2024 election, which we'll discuss here for a few minutes, is going to depend and hinge a great deal not only on the domestic, basically ineptness of the Biden administration, but it's also depending a great deal on the foreign aspects of the foreign affairs, in which our standing in the world has dropped, in which we are no longer viewed as leadership. We're no longer viewed as accountable. We're no longer viewed as dependable. And if you don't believe us, just look to Afghanistan and other places where we just are not stepping up and showing leadership. And then with Israel, when we put everything restriction-wise upon Israel and try to get them to a ceasefire, which only protects Hamas, the Joe Biden administration is completely inept when it comes to this, seemingly when it comes to how we deal with the world. So I don't want to hear another liberal tell me, well, we needed the adults back in the room. We needed people that are understanding of the process of diplomacy and others. Well, at a certain point in time, they're going to understand that diplomacy, I believe, has a very valuable place. I believe that some of our foreign assistance is very wisely spent in areas where we don't want to have war. But then you also got to understand that there's sometimes when power only understands power, when thugs only understand power, They're not going to go up against somebody that they don't know what's going to happen, which is why, as I think I've said before on this podcast, that, over the last 40 years, there's been two presidents who came into power with everybody believing that they were either going to be a dictatorship or, for the most part, they were going to get us into another war. Neither did. And that was Reagan and Trump. Because really, the world didn't know how to take Trump. I mean, Trump would take out military leaders who was actually attacking and planning attacks on our service members. He would actually talk to the Taliban, send them pictures of their own houses, saying, not another one to be killed. And nobody was killed for 18 months. I mean, you may not like it. That may not be your proper sense of, let's send in Anthony Blinken to actually discuss how we can actually come up with a terrible idea for the United States, but then we look good and we can talk to people at our cocktail parties about how diplomatic we are. No, these people don't understand diplomacy. They don't understand. They understand strength. China understands strength. North Korea understands strength. Iran understands strength. Putin understands strength. And if we don't get this through our head, folks, this is going to be a disaster that will continue to build, and continue to build. So, all that said, from the rise of the anti-Semitic issues here in the United States, where you can't even call out, you got members of Congress who can't even call out the rapes and the plundering that happened in Israel, but yet will call out every politically correct thing here in the United States when you've got a foreign policy that is non-existent. And you've got no retaliation for attacks on American forces, you're just in a bad spot. So as we look ahead into this and we look ahead at where we're headed, I think each and every person needs to really look at the 2024 election. I'm going to spend some more time on this later, probably next week. Later this week, we're going to have, next week, we're going to have Senator Ron Johnson will be on with us. Looking forward to having the senator on for his perspective on a lot of things going on in Washington. And I'm going to end up here today on this Wednesday with some discussion of Washington. Washington has got, I made a podcast a couple of weeks ago that I really laid it out and said sometimes it just has to be said. If you want to go back and catch it, you can subscribe to our podcast, go back and check the previous episodes. But we've got to get to a point, Republicans, especially on the Hill, Democrats in the minority, and Democrats are on the majority in the Senate, have got to come back to understanding that, you've got to get something done. That doesn't mean that you're going to get everything that you want. It doesn't mean that you get everything that you need. It means that you need to actually put in place a process to get 218 in the House, 60 votes in the Senate, and one president to sign it. And that deals with appropriations bills. It deals with FISA. It deals with FAA. It deals with agriculture. It deals with everything we're dealing with right now. And right now, we can't seem to come to that. We're blaming everything, saying, well, if I can't have my way, then the rest of the world is wrong. That's not the way you govern. It's just completely not the way you govern. So I want to just briefly touch here. We did a lot of foreign affairs today. I wanted to briefly touch on the fact that Washington is at a stalemate. They'll probably leave at the end of next week. The House looks to be voting formal impeachment articles, which if they were going to do this, should have done it back in September to begin what will be a first of the year process of impeachment hearings and others with Joe Biden and possibly Mayorkas as well. So really, as far as from a perspective, you've also got less than 10 legislative days when you get back in January to take the first deadline for the budget that you did this laddered CR in which you had some broke into the first batch in January, some broke into the second batch into February of funding the government. And we've not even started. We're sitting here 3 weeks, 2.5 weeks into to December now, and after Thanksgiving and after the CR passed, and nothing has been done. So if you're looking for a lot to be done in Washington, D.C., you've come to the wrong place. I'm going to pick up more on that next time we get together on the podcast, but to understand the ins and outs. Also, I didn't touch on today, but I want to do a little bit longer deep dive. The presidential race is getting down. Donald Trump is looking more and more to be the Republican nominee. I think the others are just simply hanging on, thinking something's going to happen in his court cases, and then they can try and slip in for some unknown reason how they would run between DeSantis and Haley and the others. But you're seeing the field shrink. I do have Doug Burgum actually got out of the race this week, and Doug Burgum made a great point. And I think it's something that we need to look at from the Republican Party perspective, and Democrats need to look at it as well because they've sort of locked everybody out as well. And that is who gives the right to the Republican National Committee to determine who should be on that stage. And, again, they are narrowing the field based on their criteria, based on the folks who have the most money, folks. If that had been true in so many of our primaries over the past 40, 50 years, you may not have gotten the candidate that you ended up getting. And this is going to be a bigger discussion for Ron McDaniel and others, especially at the RNC, on why we're doing the debates as we're doing them, one. And number two, how are we doing the debates as far as determining who can get in? So you take off a voice like Doug Burgum, who's been a governor of a very prosperous, growing state, and you're taking him off completely, in which, that might be the chance in which he does able to catch fire. He may not have the institutional backing of others, but maybe he has a message is to be shared. Maybe some of these others, Tim Scott and some of the others. Well, the more you take off, the more then you are limiting who the Republicans get to pick for their nominee. And if you're taking it out saying, well, the only way we're going to do this is you get enough donors, you get enough polling, and then we'll let you on the debate stage. I think we're really going to have to take a look at that as we go forward. But again, more conversation for another day. This has been a Wednesday edition of the Doug Collins podcast. Glad you're with us. Look forward to seeing you again on Friday when we have James and we have Chip, and we will be getting into a raucous Friday's Finest. So until then, y'all take care.